The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual sounds of 1,000 different species trying to communicate. Translator devices hummed, universal vocal cords clicked and whistled, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with the weight of intergalactic politics. Ambassador Zektar of the Vrex Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes and looked down at the small delegation seated in the furthest corner of the vast amphitheater. Humans. Such an odd little species. They had arrived at the council only 50 standard years ago, practically yesterday in galactic terms. Most species took centuries just to develop faster than light travel. Yet these creatures had somehow stumbled into it and immediately began exploring with the enthusiasm of newly hatched younglings. It was almost embarrassing to watch. The motion before us today, announced High Chancellor Vorth, her 6 arms gesturing dramatically, concerns the application of the human species for class, 3 civilization status, and full membership benefits in the Galactic Council. A ripple of what could only be described as polite laughter spread through the chamber. The Kethran delegation clicked their mandibles in amusement, while the crystalline beings from Silthara chimed musical notes that translated roughly to mild derision. Ambassador Zektar rose from his seat, his 12-foot frame casting a shadow over several smaller delegations. Honored Chancellor, with all due respect to our enthusiastic new friends, perhaps we should examine the requirements for Class 3 status more carefully. The human delegation shifted uncomfortably. There were only 3 of them, a remarkable show of either confidence or naivety. Most species sent dozens of representatives to even minor council meetings. The humans had sent Ambassador Sarah Chun, a military officer called Colonel Marcus Webb, and someone they'd introduced simply as Dr. Rodriguez, our cultural attaché. Please continue, Ambassador Zektar, the Chancellor said, though her tone suggested she already knew where this was heading. Zektar activated his portable display, and holographic text appeared above the chamber floor. Class 3 civilization status requires mastery of at least 15 different technological disciplines, evidence of stable interstellar commerce, successful terraforming of at least 3 worlds, and, he paused for dramatic effect, contribution of significant innovations to galactic society. The laughter was less polite this time. Several delegations openly chittered and buzzed with amusement. Now, let us examine humanity's achievements, Zektar continued, his voice taking on the tone of a professor addressing particularly slow students. They have been in space for barely 2 centuries. Their fastest ships still use chemical propulsion augmented with primitive fusion drives. They have established colonies on exactly 7 worlds, none of which could be called successfully terraformed. And as for innovations, he gestured dismissively toward the human delegation. What exactly have humans contributed to galactic civilization? Entertainment? Their films are amusing, I grant you, but hardly the stuff of advanced civilizations. Ambassador Chin stood up slowly. She was small even by human standards, but something in her posture made even a massive Zektar pause. May I respond to these accusations, Chancellor? By all means, Ambassador Chun. Though I'm not sure what response could adequately address Ambassador Zektar's quite reasonable concerns. Chun activated her own display device, a simple tablet that looked positively primitive compared to the holographic projectors used by other delegations. Honored members of the Council, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about humanity's role in galactic civilization. She touched the tablet screen, and an image appeared in the air above them. It showed what appeared to be a simple shipping container, the kind used for interstellar cargo transport. Every member of the Council recognized it immediately. This is a standard galactic type, 7 shipping container, Chin said calmly. Every species in this chamber uses them. They're manufactured by Consolidated Galactic Industries, based on designs originally created by. She paused, human engineers working for what was then called Maersk Luna Corporation. The chamber fell silent. Zektar's mandibles clicked uncertainly. But, surely, he said, that's just a coincidence. Simple container design is hardly revolutionary. Chun touched her tablet again. This time the image showed a sleek spacecraft that every being in the chamber knew intimately, the standard diplomatic courier used by the Council itself. This is the Council's own courier design, the Harmony-class vessel, based on a human spacecraft architecture originally developed by Boeing Orbital. The energy distribution system was designed by human engineers. The navigation interface was designed by human engineers. Even the waste recycling system was designed by human engineers. An uncomfortable murmur began to spread through the chamber. Dr. Rodriguez stood up and activated his own simple display device. Perhaps, he said in a calm, professorial tone, we should address Ambassador Zektar's other concerns. Technological mastery, for instance. The display showed a complex schematic that made several alien engineers lean forward with interest. This is the quantum resonance field generator that powers the faster-than-light communication network used by every member species. Originally invented by Dr. Sarah Kim at MIT Luna in 2387. The compression algorithms that make galactic internet possible, developed by a team at Google Titan. The universal translation protocols that allow us all to communicate right now, created by human linguists working with IBM Quantum. Colonel Webb finally stood, his military bearing evident even to alien observers. If I may, Dr. Rodriguez, I think our fellow council members might be interested in some of the more practical applications of human innovation. His display showed technical specifications that made the military attaches in various delegations suddenly pay very close attention indeed. The shield generators protecting every major space station and planet in council space use human-designed harmonics. The targeting systems in Council Defense Force ships are based on human fire control algorithms. The emergency life support systems that have saved countless lives across the galaxy? Human engineering. The silence in the chamber was becoming oppressive. Chancellor Vortha's multiple eyes blinked in rapid sequence, a sign of confusion among her species. But, she said slowly, we purchased these technologies from established galactic corporations. Consolidated Galactic Industries, Vrex Dynamic Systems, Kethran Technical Solutions. Ambassador Chun smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a particularly pleasant expression. Yes, she said. You do. Companies that license human-designed technologies from human corporations, then manufacture and sell them to the galaxy at substantial markup. The original patents and designs? Almost exclusively human. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up another display, this one showing financial records. In the past 50 years, galactic civilization has purchased, licensed, or reverse-engineered approximately 2,300,000 distinct technological innovations from human sources. The total economic impact of human innovation on galactic civilization is estimated at roughly 47 trillion galactic credits annually. The chamber erupted. Delegates began shouting in dozens of languages, translator systems struggling to keep up with the sudden flood of urgent communications. Several ambassadors were frantically contacting their home governments on personal communicators. Ambassador Zektar was scrolling through data on his own display, his mandibles clicking faster and faster as he read. This cannot be accurate, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Perhaps, Ambassador Chin said, her voice cutting through the chaos with surprising authority, we should discuss what humanity actually want from Class 3 civilization status. The chamber gradually fell quiet again, though the tension was now entirely different from before. Where there had been amused condescension, there was now wary attention. We don't want special privileges, Chin continued. We don't want preferential treatment in trade negotiations. We certainly don't want to restrict access to human innovations. We believe strongly in the free exchange of knowledge and technology. Colonel Webb stepped forward slightly. What we want is very simple. We want fair payment for our contributions. We want credit for our innovations. And we want respect for our capabilities. Dr. Rodriguez activated one final display. This one showed a timeline stretching back almost 200 years. Since humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel, he said, we have shared our innovations freely with galactic civilization. We've licensed our technologies at minimal cost. We've trained alien engineers in human techniques. We've collaborated on countless joint projects. The timeline showed hundreds of technological breakthroughs, each one marked with a small human flag. But we've done it quietly, Dr. Rodriguez continued. We've worked through established galactic corporations rather than creating our own. We've allowed others to take credit for our work because we believed it would lead to better cooperation and mutual understanding. Ambassador Chin stepped forward again. We were wrong. Clearly, humility and cooperation are interpreted as weakness and incompetence in galactic politics. She looked directly at Ambassador Zektar. You asked what humans have contributed to galactic civilization. The answer is simple. Nearly everything that makes modern galactic civilization possible. Chancellor Vorth finally found her voice. Ambassador Chun, these claims are extraordinary. You're suggesting that humanity has been the primary driver of technological advancement in galactic society for the past 2 centuries. I'm not suggesting it, Chancellor. I'm stating it as documented fact. Chun gestured to her companions. Dr. Rodriguez has compiled a comprehensive database of human innovations and their applications throughout galactic society. Colonel Webb has prepared a detailed analysis of human contributions to galactic defense and security. And I have documentation of every licensing agreement, every technology transfer, every collaborative project. The silence stretched out until Ambassador Zektar finally spoke. Even if these claims are accurate, he said slowly, they don't change the fundamental requirements for Class 3 status. Humans still lack the territorial expansion, the established trade networks, the military capabilities. Colonel Webb's smile was even less pleasant than Ambassador Chen's had been. About that, he said, perhaps we should schedule a follow-up meeting. There are some things about human capabilities that we haven't discussed yet. Dr. Rodriguez closed his display and gathered his papers. For instance, he said conversationally, I think the Council would be very interested to learn about the human industrial capacity that actually manufactures most of the goods sold by those established galactic corporations. Ambassador Chun stood and straightened her jacket. Or the human research facilities that develop the technologies licensed by galactic defense contractors. Or to the human logistics networks that actually deliver goods across galactic civilization. We'll simply begin operating our business relationships according to standard galactic commercial practices. Full market rates for our technologies. Proper credit for our innovations. And, of course, we'll need to renegotiate all those sweetheart licensing deals we've been providing to galactic corporations. Colonel Webb added helpfully, we'll also be reviewing our voluntary support for Council defense operations. Purely as a cost-cutting measure, you understand. Dr. Rodriguez smiled pleasantly. And naturally, we'll need to bring our manufacturing and logistics operations up to standard galactic labor practices. Much more expensive than our current cooperative arrangements, but I'm sure everyone will understand. The 3 humans left the chamber, leaving behind 1,000 alien delegates who were only just beginning to understand what they had been taking for granted. In the corridor outside, Ambassador Chun allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Think they'll approve our application next month? Colonel Webb asked. Oh yes, Chun replied. In fact, I suspect they'll be remarkably eager to approve it, along with several other requests we haven't even made yet. Dr. Rodriguez chuckled. It's amazing how quickly people can develop an appreciation for proper documentation. As they walked toward their ship, none of them mentioned the classified files they hadn't shared with the Council. The files about human military capabilities, industrial capacity, and technological development that made their public achievements look like simple parlor tricks. Those files would remain classified for now. After all, humanity had always believed in the value of keeping a few surprises in reserve. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 72 hours after the human delegation had left the chamber. Ambassador Zektar sat in his ornate chair, staring at a datapad filled with reports that made his mandibles ache from nervous clicking. Around the chamber, hundreds of other delegates were having similar reactions to their own disturbing discoveries. Chancellor Vorth called the session to order with considerably less ceremony than usual. Her 6 arms moved in agitated patterns that spoke to deep unease among her species. Honored delegates, she began, I trust you have all had time to review the documentation provided by the human delegation. I have also received preliminary reports from our respective intelligence services regarding the accuracy of human claims. A low murmur of uncomfortable acknowledgement rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Zektar, the Chancellor continued, as the delegate who first questioned human capabilities, perhaps you would share your findings? Zektar rose slowly, his imposing height somehow seeming less intimidating than it had 3 days ago. Honored Chancellor, I am forced to report that human claims appear to be substantially accurate. He activated his display, showing a complex organizational chart. Our intelligence services have traced the corporate ownership structures of major galactic manufacturers. What we discovered is disturbing. The chart showed dozens of familiar company names, each connected by a web of subsidiary relationships, licensing agreements, and technological dependencies that all seem to lead back to a surprisingly small number of human corporations. Consolidated Galactic Industries, which manufactures approximately 30% of all Starship components used by Council species, is wholly owned by a human conglomerate called Lockheed Boeing General Dynamics. Vrex Dynamics Systems, our own empire's primary technology provider, operates exclusively under license from human companies. The royalty payments alone account for nearly 15% of our annual gross domestic product. A Kethran delegate stood up, her mandibles clicking in distress. The situation is similar throughout the galaxy. My government's preliminary investigation reveals that roughly 60% of all manufactured goods in Kethran space are produced under human licenses or using human design technologies. Dr. Silthara, speaking for the crystalline beings, chimed a series of harmonic tones that the translators rendered as deeply concerned observations. Our species' entire information technology infrastructure is based on human quantum computing advances. Without human-designed algorithms, our interstellar communication networks would cease to function within days. Chancellor Vorth looked around the chamber with growing alarm. Are you telling me that galactic civilization is economically dependent on a species we've been treating as barely qualified for basic membership? It's worse than that, came a new voice from the back of the chamber. Ambassador Thex of the Rigellian Federation rarely spoke during council sessions, which made his intervention particularly noteworthy. My government has been conducting a thorough audit of our military capabilities since the human presentation. Thex activated a holographic display that made several military attaches lean forward with interest. This is a standard Council Defense Force battleship, Thex said, highlighting the familiar angular design of the CDF's primary warship. We always assumed it was based on proven Rigellian naval architecture. We were wrong. The image zoomed in on specific components, each one highlighted in red. The power distribution system, human design. The shield generators, human design. The weapons targeting systems, human design. The life support systems, human design. Even the artificial gravity generators are based on human gravitational field manipulation technology. Colonel Webb's voice echoed from the chamber's memory banks as the recording of his statement played back. The shield generators protecting every major space station and planet in Council space use human-designed harmonics. Our entire military fleet, Thex continued grimly, is essentially human technology assembled in Rigellian factories and painted with Rigellian colors. A delegate from the Centauri Commonwealth stood up abruptly. If this is true for military systems, what about civilian infrastructure? The question hung in the air like a toxic gas. Chancellor Vorth's expression suggested she already suspected the answer. Perhaps, she said slowly, we should contact the human delegation and request a more detailed briefing on the scope of their involvement in galactic civilization. Ambassador Zektar's mandibles clicked nervously. Chancellor, I attempted to contact the human delegation yesterday. Their response was illuminating. He produced a simple paper message, an affectation that humans seem to prefer for important communications. They indicated that they would be happy to provide additional information, but that such briefings would need to be conducted under standard galactic commercial consulting agreements. The fee structure they provided was quite expensive. How expensive? The Chancellor asked, though her tone suggested she suspected the answer wouldn't be pleasant. Approximately 100,000 galactic credits per hour for technical consultation, 500,000 for detailed system analysis, and 2 million for comprehensive infrastructure assessment. The chamber fell silent. Several smaller delegations were frantically calculating whether their governments could afford such fees. However, Zektar continued, they did provide a complimentary summary of human involvement in key galactic systems. He activated another display, this one showing a three-dimensional map of known space. Various trade routes, communication networks, and defense installations were highlighted in different colors. The green indicators represent systems with significant human technological components. Yellow indicates moderate human involvement. Red indicates systems that are entirely dependent on human technology or expertise. The map was almost entirely red and green. Only a handful of yellow dots were visible, and virtually no system showed up as completely independent of human involvement. Dr. Silthara's harmonic chiming took on an alarmed quality that needed no translation. According to this analysis, Zektar continued, his voice becoming increasingly strained, Humans have been the primary technological innovators in galactic civilization for the past 2 centuries. Not just contributors, primary innovators. A new voice cut through the growing panic. Perhaps we should examine what this means for ongoing galactic operations. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Ambassador Chun, standing calmly in the doorway of the chamber with Dr. Rodriguez and Colonel Webb flanking her. They had arrived so quietly that none of the delegates had noticed their entrance. Ambassador Chun, Chancellor Vorth said, her relief evident. Thank you for joining us. We were just discussing. Yes, we heard, Chun said, walking down the center aisle with the same measured pace she had used 3 days earlier. Your intelligence services have been quite thorough. We appreciate their attention to detail. She reached the center of the chamber and turned to address the assembled delegates. Since you've taken the initiative to investigate human involvement in galactic civilization, perhaps we should discuss what that investigation has revealed. Dr. Rodriguez activated his tablet, and the familiar holographic display appeared above the chamber floor. What your intelligence services have discovered represents only the publicly available information about human contributions to galactic civilization, he said calmly. The technologies we license, the systems we design, the infrastructure we maintain through legitimate commercial agreements. Colonel Webb stepped forward. What they haven't discovered yet are the systems we maintain through other arrangements. The display changed to show a different kind of map, this one focusing on galactic defense networks, emergency response systems, and critical infrastructure monitoring. For instance, Webb continued, the asteroid monitoring system that protects inhabited worlds from collision threats is staffed and operated entirely by human technicians. The Galactic Early Warning Network that alerts civilizations to potential military threats runs on human-built sensors managed from human-operated facilities. Ambassador Chun gestured to the display. The Emergency Response Coordination System that manages disaster relief across the galaxy is based on human logistics algorithms and operated by human emergency management specialists. The Interstellar Shipping Lane Monitoring System that prevents commercial traffic collisions is maintained by human space traffic controllers. The implications began to dawn on the assembled delegates. These weren't just technologies that humans had contributed to galactic civilization. These were active, ongoing operations that required continuous human involvement. Ambassador Chun, Chancellor Vorth said slowly, are you telling us that humans are actively managing critical galactic infrastructure systems? Yes, Chun replied simply. Someone has to. These systems require constant monitoring, regular maintenance, and frequent upgrades. Most galactic civilizations prefer to focus on policy and administration rather than operational details. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up another display showing staffing charts and operational hierarchies. The Council's own Information Technology Department is 60% human personnel. The Galactic Communication Network Operations Center is staffed almost entirely by humans and human-trained technicians. The Interstellar Banking System that manages galactic commerce runs on human-designed software maintained by human programmers. A Vrex delegate stood up abruptly. But surely these systems have non-human oversight. Galactic civilizations can't be completely dependent on human operations. Colonel Webb smiled, that unpleasant smile again. Of course there's non-human oversight. Supervisors, administrators, policymakers. Very important positions. They make crucial decisions about resource allocation, strategic priorities, regulatory compliance. He paused meaningfully. Of course, those decisions are typically implemented by human technical staff using human design systems following human-developed procedures. The silence in the chamber was becoming oppressive again. Chancellor Vorth's multiple eyes were blinking in a rapid pattern that indicated severe stress among her species. Ambassador Chun, she said carefully, what exactly is humanity's position regarding these operational responsibilities? We're happy to continue providing these services, Chun replied pleasantly. We believe strongly in contributing to galactic civilization. However, we do think our contributions deserve proper recognition. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. We've prepared a comprehensive proposal for formalizing humanity's role in galactic civilization. It includes fair compensation for our services, appropriate credit for our contributions, and recognition of our technological capabilities. He handed a simple paper document to Chancellor Vorth. We believe this proposal addresses the concerns raised during our previous class, 3 Civilization Status Review. The Chancellor scanned the document, her expression growing more alarmed with each paragraph. This proposal, she said slowly, appears to request immediate elevation to Class 1 civilization status, along with permanent seats on the Council Security Committee, Oversight Authority for Galactic Infrastructure Systems, and, she paused, clearly struggling with the implications, exclusive licensing rights for human-developed technologies currently in galactic use. That's correct, Chen confirmed. We believe these terms reflect humanity's actual contributions to galactic civilization rather than the modest recognition we've received previously. A Kethran delegate stood up angrily. This is extortion. You're threatening to disrupt galactic civilization unless we grant you unprecedented authority. Colonel Webb's expression didn't change, but something in his posture became noticeably more military. Sir, he said calmly, I think you've misunderstood our position. We're not threatening to disrupt anything. We're simply requesting fair compensation and recognition for services we're already providing. Dr. Rodriguez added helpfully, of course, if the Council prefers to develop independent alternatives to human-provided services, we would certainly understand. We estimate such development would take approximately 15 to 20 standard years, with implementation costs in the range of several hundred trillion galactic credits. During which time, Chun continued smoothly, galactic civilization would need to continue operating with existing human-managed systems under whatever terms the Council considers appropriate. The message was clear without being explicitly threatening. Humanity wasn't demanding anything. They were simply pointing out the reality of galactic civilization's dependence on human contributions and requesting appropriate recognition for their role. Ambassador Zektar had been frantically reading through the proposal document. Ambassador Chun, he said, his voice strained, some of these terms would effectively make humanity the technological administrators of galactic civilization. Yes, Chun agreed pleasantly, which accurately reflects our current unofficial role. We're simply requesting that this arrangement be formalized with appropriate oversight, compensation, and recognition. Chancellor Vorth looked around the chamber at hundreds of delegates who were clearly struggling with the implications of what they were learning. Ambassador Chun, she said finally, the Council will need time to review this proposal and consult with member governments. Of course, Chun replied. Take all the time you need. Current operations will continue normally during your deliberations. She paused thoughtfully. Although I should mention that our operations staff will be transitioning to standard galactic employment practices next month. Better benefits, more reasonable working hours, proper overtime compensation. Nothing dramatic, but there may be some temporary service interruptions during the adjustment period. The three humans began walking toward the exit again, leaving behind a chamber full of delegates who were beginning to understand that their entire civilization was built on a foundation they had never bothered to examine. Oh, Dr. Rodriguez called back over his shoulder. We've also scheduled a presentation for next week on human manufacturing capabilities. Very interesting data about where galactic consumer goods actually come from. We think the Council will find it quite educational. As the humans disappeared into the corridor, the chamber erupted into dozens of urgent conversations as delegates began contacting their home governments with news that was going to fundamentally change galactic politics forever. The emergency meetings had been going on for 6 days straight. In government buildings across the galaxy, leaders of major civilizations were discovering that their societies were far more dependent on human innovation than anyone had realized. The revelations were spreading like wildfire through diplomatic channels, and the implications were becoming impossible to ignore. On Vrex Prime, Emperor Klextar paced around his throne room while his advisors presented increasingly disturbing reports. The ornate chamber, built to demonstrate Vrex's supremacy through sheer scale and grandeur, suddenly felt small and confining. Tell me again about our industrial capacity, the Emperor commanded, his massive frame casting shadows across the polished floor. Minister Vextal consulted his datapad with obvious reluctance. Your Imperial Majesty, our investigation reveals that approximately 78% of Vrex industrial production relies on human-designed manufacturing processes, human-built machinery, or human-developed material science. The Emperor's mandibles clicked ominously. And our military production? 86%, Your Majesty. Our shipyards use human metallurgy, human electronics, human propulsion systems. Even our weapons systems are based on human innovations. Emperor Klextar stopped pacing and turned to face his advisors. Are you telling me that the mighty Vrex Empire is essentially a human client state? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Meanwhile, on the crystalline world of Silthara, the collective consciousness that governed their species was experiencing something unprecedented: complete confusion. Their harmonic communications, usually perfectly synchronized, were chaotic with overlapping concerns and contradictory realizations. The primary consciousness finally managed to establish coherence. We must understand the scope of human integration in our society, it chimed, the harmonic tones translating to urgent determination. Their investigation revealed that human technologies weren't just used in Silthara society. They were fundamental to its operation. The crystalline being's entire communication network, which formed the basis of their collective consciousness, relied on human-designed quantum resonance fields. Their energy distribution systems, their manufacturing processes, even their artistic expressions were all enhanced by human innovations. Most disturbing of all was the discovery that the mathematical principles underlying their most advanced technologies had been developed by human scientists and simply adapted for crystalline use. Their proud civilization of pure logic and mathematical perfection was built on a foundation of human intellectual achievement. On Kethare, the insectoid ruling council was conducting its own frantic investigation. Their society, based on rigid hierarchical efficiency, was discovering that their efficiency was almost entirely dependent on human logistic systems, human manufacturing techniques, and human organizational methods. The irony is overwhelming, clicked Council Prime Zekthara, her mandibles clattering with distress. We have spent decades mocking human chaos and inefficiency, while secretly depending on human systems to maintain our own order. Her aide presented the latest findings. Council Prime, it appears that our famous productivity rates are achieved primarily through human-designed automation systems. Our manufacturing efficiency comes from human-developed process optimization. Even our military discipline relies on human-created training protocols. The discoveries weren't limited to the major powers. Smaller civilizations throughout the galaxy were making similar realizations. The Centauri Commonwealth found that their democratic institutions operated on human-designed voting systems and information management protocols. The Rigellian Federation discovered that their military doctrine was based on human strategic analysis. Even the isolationist Tau Empire had been unknowingly using human technologies in their supposedly pure traditional manufacturing. But it was on Earth itself that the most significant meetings were taking place. In a secure conference facility buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, representatives from every major human corporation, research institution, and government agency were gathering for the most important strategic planning session in human history. Dr. Sarah Kim, now in her 80s but still sharp as the quantum field she had helped discover, stood before a holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had literally helped build the modern galaxy, "it appears that our long-term strategy has been more successful than even we anticipated." The display showed a complex network diagram illustrating human technological integration throughout galactic civilization. Every major system, from interstellar commerce to planetary defense, showed significant human involvement. "When we first achieved faster-than-light travel," Dr. Kim continued, "we faced a choice. We could have announced ourselves as a major technological power and demanded respect through strength. Instead, we chose a different path." She gestured to historical data showing the early years of human galactic involvement. "We chose infiltration over domination, cooperation over confrontation. We shared our technologies freely, worked through established alien corporations, and allowed others to take credit for our innovations. The result is a galactic civilization that is economically and technologically dependent on human contributions while being largely unaware of that dependence." General Harrison Webb, Colonel Webb's father and one of the architects of human galactic strategy, stood up to address the assembly. "The question before us now is simple," he said. "Do we reveal the full extent of human capabilities, or do we continue to operate from the shadows?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of the Human Cultural Integration Project, activated her own display showing detailed analyses of alien societies and their dependencies on human systems. Our anthropological teams have been studying galactic civilizations for 2 centuries, she said. We understand their social structures, their economic systems, their military capabilities, and their psychological profiles better than they understand themselves. The display showed intricate charts detailing the power structures, economic vulnerabilities, and cultural weaknesses of every major galactic civilization. More importantly, Dr. Rodriguez continued, we've been quietly shaping their development for generations. The technologies we've shared weren't random innovations. They were carefully selected to create beneficial dependencies while encouraging social and economic structures that align with human values. A corporate representative from Boeing Orbital raised his hand. Dr. Rodriguez, are you suggesting that human policy has been to deliberately make alien civilizations dependent on us? Not dependent, Dr. Rodriguez replied. Integrated. There's a crucial difference. A dependent civilization can break free through effort and innovation. An integrated civilization becomes part of a larger system where independence isn't just difficult, it's economically and socially irrational. She pulled up economic models showing trade flows, technological dependencies, and social connections between human and alien societies. For instance, Vrek's industrial capacity isn't just built on human technologies, it's integrated into human supply chains. Their raw materials are processed using human techniques, transported on human-designed ships, and sold through human-managed distribution networks. Breaking free from human influence would require them to rebuild their entire civilization from scratch. General Webb nodded approvingly. The same principle applies to military systems. Alien defense forces aren't just using human-designed weapons. They're trained by human advisors, supplied through human logistics networks, and coordinated using human command and control systems. Their military effectiveness is completely integrated with human capabilities. Dr. Kim returned to the center of the room, which brings us to the current situation. Our diplomatic team has just demanded formal recognition of human contributions to galactic civilization. The question is how far we're prepared to push that demand. She activated a new display showing various scenarios for human revelation of their true capabilities. Scenario 1. Limited revelation. We reveal enough of our involvement to secure Class 1 civilization status and appropriate recognition, but maintain the illusion that alien civilizations are largely independent partners. Scenario 2. Moderate revelation. We reveal the full extent of our technological integration, but maintain the pretense that this developed through normal commercial cooperation rather than deliberate strategy. Scenario 3. Complete revelation. We reveal not just our technological contributions, but our deliberate shaping of galactic civilization over the past 2 centuries. The room fell silent as the implications of each scenario sank in. A representative from Lockheed Boeing General Dynamics finally spoke up. What are the projected responses to each scenario? Dr. Rodriguez consulted her psychological profiles. Scenario 1 would likely result in grudging acceptance and improved cooperation. Alien governments would be uncomfortable with the revelations, but would probably rationalize them as acceptable business relationships. Scenario 2 would cause significant political upheaval across galactic civilization. Many governments would fall as populations learned about the extent of their dependence on human systems. We'd likely see economic chaos, military restructuring, and possibly armed conflict between factions favoring different approaches to human relations. Scenario 3 would probably trigger complete civilizational crisis across the galaxy. Most alien societies would face existential questions about their independence, their achievements, and their place in galactic civilization. The psychological impact could be devastating. General Webb stood up again. There's also a 4th scenario we should consider: forced revelation. He activated a classified display that made several people in the room lean forward with concern. Our intelligence services indicate that several alien governments are conducting their own investigations into human capabilities. The Vrex Empire has assigned their best intelligence operatives to analyze human industrial capacity. The Ridiculed Federation is conducting covert surveillance of human research facilities. Even the Tau Empire has begun investigating human cultural and technological influence. The implications were clear. Humanity might not have the luxury of choosing when and how to reveal their true role in galactic civilization. Dr. Kim looked around the room at the assembled representatives of human power. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to make a decision. Our diplomatic team is presenting alien governments with demands for recognition and respect. Those governments are conducting investigations that will eventually reveal the truth regardless of our preferences. And our own capabilities continue to grow in ways that will become increasingly difficult to conceal. She gestured to the displays showing human involvement in galactic civilization. We stand at a crossroads. We can continue to operate from the shadows, gradually revealing our capabilities as necessary to maintain our position. Or we can step into the light and claim our rightful place as the architects of modern galactic civilization. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. It was time for humanity to stop hiding. Dr. Kim contacted Ambassador Chen's diplomatic team with new instructions and a complete authorization to reveal whatever capabilities might be necessary to secure humanity's position in galactic politics. The message was simple: all restrictions lifted. Show them what we really are. Ambassador Chen received the message while preparing for the next council session. She read it twice, then smiled with genuine pleasure for the first time in weeks. "Colonel Webb," she said to her military attaché, "I think it's time we shared some of those classified files you mentioned." "All of them?" Webb asked. "All of them," Chen confirmed. "Dr. Rodriguez, contact the council and inform them that we're prepared to provide a complete briefing on human capabilities and contributions to galactic civilization. Should I mention the scope of what we'll be revealing?" Rodriguez asked. Ambassador Chen's smile became positively predatory. "Tell them they might want to schedule a longer session. We have a lot to discuss." The great assembly chamber of the Galactic Council had never been as crowded as it was on this morning. Word of humanity's upcoming complete briefing had spread through diplomatic channels like wildfire, and every major civilization had sent their most senior representatives. Even species that rarely participated in council politics had dispatched observers. Ambassador Chen stood at the center of the vast amphitheater, no longer dwarfed by its immense scale. Somehow, her small human frame seemed to command the attention of thousands of alien beings with an authority that even the massive architecture couldn't diminish. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Today we will discuss the true nature of humanity's relationship with galactic civilization." Behind her, Dr. Rodriguez and Colonel Webb activated the most sophisticated presentation system the Council had ever seen. Instead of simple holographic displays, the entire chamber was transformed into an immersive environment where delegates found themselves surrounded by three-dimensional representations of data, timelines, and technological schematics. "Let's begin with a question," Chen continued. "How many of you arrived at this session aboard vessels using human-designed propulsion systems?" The question hung in the air as delegates began to realize that they couldn't answer it with certainty. The transportation systems they had always taken for granted suddenly seemed mysterious. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, and the chamber environment shifted to show the interior schematics of various spacecraft designs. The standard diplomatic shuttles used by council members utilize fusion drives based on the Miller-Chin confinement principle, developed at Stanford Orbital in 2298. The navigation systems are built around the Thomson-Singh coordinate algorithms, created by MIT Luna in 2312. The life support systems use the Rodriguez-Patel atmospheric recycling process, developed by the Universidad de Barcelona's Space Division in 2334. The display zoomed out to show the Council's space station itself. "This facility," Dr. Rodriguez continued, "operates on human-designed power distribution systems, human-engineered life support networks, and human-developed structural integrity protocols. The artificial gravity you're currently experiencing comes from human gravitational field manipulation technology. The air you're breathing has been processed by human-designed atmosphere processors." An uncomfortable murmur began to spread through the chamber as delegates realized they were literally surrounded by human technology. Colonel Webb activated the military analysis section of their presentation. "Perhaps we should discuss galactic security," he said, his tone deceptively casual. "The Council Defense Force currently operates 2,847 capital ships, 12,000 escort vessels, and approximately 45,000 fighter craft across 200 star systems. The chamber filled with technical specifications of military vessels that made the alien military attaches pay very close attention indeed. Every single one of these vessels uses human-designed shield generators, human-developed weapons targeting systems, and human-engineered defensive countermeasures. The strategic command and control networks that coordinate Council military operations run on human software platforms managed by human technical staff. He paused to let this sink in, then continued with information that made several delegates visibly uncomfortable. More importantly, the ammunition, spare parts, and consumable supplies for these vessels are manufactured in facilities that are either owned by human corporations or operated under exclusive license from human companies. The logistics networks that supply Council military forces across the galaxy are managed by human transportation specialists using human-designed distribution systems. Ambassador Zektar, who had been listening with growing alarm, finally stood up. "Colonel Webb," he said, his voice strained, "are you telling us that Council military forces are completely dependent on human support?" "Not completely," Webb replied with that familiar, unpleasant smile. "They could operate independently for approximately 6 to 8 standard months before running out of ammunition, spare parts, and other critical supplies." The chamber erupted in urgent conversations as military representatives began frantically contacting their respective defense ministries. Ambassador Chen raised her hand for silence, and the noise gradually subsided. "Perhaps," she said, "we should discuss the scope of human involvement in galactic civilization more systematically." The chamber environment shifted again, this time displaying a comprehensive timeline stretching back over 2 centuries. Human galactic strategy began in 2387, immediately after our development of practical faster-than-light travel, Chen explained. At that time, we faced a choice about how to interact with established galactic civilizations. The timeline showed the early years of human space exploration and their first contacts with alien species. We could have announced ourselves as a technological power and demanded recognition through military strength. This approach had historical precedents in human civilization and would have been familiar to us. Instead, Dr. Rodriguez continued, taking over the narrative, we chose what our sociologists called the integration protocol. Rather than competing with existing civilizations, we would become indispensable to them. The display showed detailed flowcharts outlining the human strategic approach to galactic relations. Phase 1 involved establishing commercial relationships with existing galactic corporations. We licensed our technologies at extremely favorable rates, provided technical expertise, and gradually became essential partners rather than competitors. Phase 2 involved expanding our technological integration while maintaining low political profiles. We allowed alien corporations to take credit for human innovations while ensuring that the actual technical knowledge remained concentrated in human institutions. Phase 3 involved becoming integral to galactic infrastructure while remaining largely invisible to galactic politics. By this point, most major systems in galactic civilization required continuous human involvement to function properly. Colonel Webb stepped forward to continue the explanation. "The genius of the integration protocol," he said, was that it made human contributions seem natural and inevitable rather than imposed or coercive. Alien civilizations chose to adopt human technologies because they were superior. They chose to work with human companies because we offered better terms. They chose to hire human technical specialists because we were more effective. The timeline advanced to show the current era, with humanity's involvement in galactic civilization mapped in stunning detail. Today, Webb continued, human involvement in galactic civilization extends far beyond simple technology transfer. We have become integral to the economic, military, and social systems that keep galactic society functioning. Ambassador Chen activated a new display showing current human operations across the galaxy. At this moment, human personnel are managing interstellar traffic control for 847 star systems. Human engineers are maintaining the communications networks that connect 1,200 civilizations. Human logistics specialists are coordinating the supply chains that deliver food, medicine, and consumer goods to approximately 40 billion beings across the galaxy. She gestured to specific examples on the display. The asteroid monitoring system that protects your home world from collision threats is staffed entirely by humans working from facilities in the Sol system. The early warning networks that alert you to potential military threats are managed by human intelligence specialists. The emergency response systems that coordinate disaster relief across the galaxy are operated by human emergency management teams. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up economic data that made several trade representatives lean forward with alarm. Economically, human involvement in galactic civilization has become total. We don't just design and manufacture most of the goods used by galactic society. We manage the supply chains, operate the transportation networks, and provide the financial services that make galactic commerce possible. The interstellar banking system that processes your transactions, human-designed and human-operated. The currency exchange mechanisms that allow different species to trade, human-managed. The credit rating systems that determine loan eligibility, human-developed and human-administered. The scope of human involvement was becoming overwhelming. Delegates were beginning to realize that their civilizations weren't just using human technologies, they were living within human-managed systems. But Ambassador Chen wasn't finished. Now, she said, let me share some information that we've kept classified until today. The chamber environment shifted to display classified human facilities, research installations, and industrial complexes that most aliens had never known existed. These are the human manufacturing facilities that actually produce the goods sold by galactic corporations, Chun said calmly. Located primarily in the Sol system and our early colonial worlds, these installations have a combined industrial capacity approximately 15 times larger than the rest of galactic civilization combined. The numbers were staggering. Massive orbital shipyards, asteroid mining operations, and automated manufacturing complexes that dwarfed anything built by other species. We have been operating well below our actual production capacity, Chun continued, because flooding galactic markets with cheap human manufactured goods would have disrupted the economic systems we were trying to integrate with. Colonel Webb activated the military section of the classified briefing. Similarly, our military capabilities have been deliberately understated, he said. The human fleet currently consists of approximately 50,000 active vessels, with another 200,000 in reserve or under construction. The specifications that appeared made every military representative in the chamber sit up in alarm. Human warships were not only more numerous than anyone had suspected, they were technologically superior to anything else in the galaxy. Our vessels use defensive systems that are approximately 50 years more advanced than current Council standard. Our weapons systems incorporate technologies that haven't been released for galactic use. Our strategic capabilities include options that other civilizations haven't yet imagined. Dr. Rodriguez returned to the center of the chamber. But, perhaps most importantly, he said, we have detailed intelligence on every major civilization in the galaxy. We understand your economic systems, your military capabilities, your social structures, and your strategic weaknesses better than you understand them yourselves. He activated a display showing psychological profiles, economic analyses, and strategic assessments for every major galactic power. We know which civilizations are economically vulnerable to trade disruptions. We know which military forces depend entirely on human-supplied systems. We know which governments would fall if their populations learned about their dependence on human support. The silence in the chamber was becoming oppressive as delegates began to understand the full implications of what they were learning. Ambassador Chun stepped forward for the final revelation. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying absolute authority, galactic civilization, as you know, is a human creation. Not just the technologies, not just the economic systems, but the entire political and social structure of modern galactic society has been shaped by human influence over the past 2 centuries. She gestured to the comprehensive displays surrounding them. The peaceful cooperation between species, the stable trade relationships, the effective military alliances, these didn't develop naturally. They were encouraged, supported, and, when necessary, engineered by human diplomats, economists, and strategic planners working behind the scenes. The reason galactic civilization has experienced unprecedented peace and prosperity over the past 2 centuries isn't because different species learned to get along better. It's because human influence has gradually shaped galactic society into forms that promote cooperation and discourage conflict. The chamber was completely silent now. Thousands of alien beings were struggling to process the revelation that their entire civilization was, in effect, a human construct. Chancellor Vorth finally found her voice. Ambassador Chun, she said slowly, what exactly does humanity want from us? Chen's smile was neither unpleasant nor particularly friendly. It was simply confident. We want to stop pretending, she said. We want formal recognition of our actual role in galactic civilization. We want appropriate representation in galactic governance. And we want fair compensation for the services we provide. She gestured to the displays showing human capabilities and involvement. In short, Chancellor, we want to be acknowledged as what we actually are, the architects and administrators of modern galactic civilization. The question hanging in the air was obvious, though no one wanted to ask it directly. What would happen if the galaxy refused to acknowledge humanity's role? Colonel Webb answered the unspoken question. Of course, he said conversationally. If the Council prefers to maintain current arrangements, we're perfectly happy to continue operating as we have been. Though I should mention that our operational costs have been rising lately. The message was clear without being threatening. Humanity wasn't demanding anything they weren't already providing. They were simply requesting that the reality of galactic civilization be formally acknowledged. The choice facing the Council was simple. Accept humanity as the senior partner they had always been, or try to imagine what galactic civilization would look like without human involvement. Looking around at the displays showing the comprehensive extent of human integration into every aspect of galactic society, that choice was becoming increasingly obvious. The emergency recess had lasted for 18 hours. Throughout the galaxy, governments were in crisis as leaders tried to process the implications of humanity's revelations. Some had fallen to emergency votes of no confidence. Others had declared martial law to prevent civil unrest. A few had simply shut down entirely, while their ruling body struggled to comprehend their new reality. When the Council reconvened, the atmosphere was entirely different from the casual dismissal that had characterized their first meeting with the human delegation. The chamber was packed beyond capacity, with additional viewing areas activated for the flood of observers who had demanded access to the proceedings. Chancellor Vorth called the session to order with visible effort. Her multiple arms moved in patterns that betrayed deep stress and uncertainty. The Council has had time to consult with member governments regarding the human presentation, she began. We are prepared to respond to humanity's proposal for formal recognition and restructured relationships. Ambassador Chun stood calmly in the center of the chamber, flanked by Dr. Rodriguez and Colonel Webb. Behind them, several additional human representatives had joined the delegation. Faces that many aliens recognized as legendary figures in galactic technology, commerce, and administration. We are prepared to listen, Chancellor, Chun said simply. Chancellor Vorth consulted her notes with trembling hands. The Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's request for Class 1 civilization status and senior representation in galactic governance. She paused, clearly struggling with what she had to say. The request is approved without reservation. A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. Many delegates had expected extended negotiations or at least symbolic resistance to human demands. Furthermore, the Chancellor continued, the Council formally recognizes humanity as the primary technological and administrative civilization in galactic society. We acknowledge that human contributions to galactic civilization have been vastly understated in previous assessments. Ambassador Zektar stood up slowly. The massive Rex ambassador seemed somehow diminished compared to his imposing presence during their first encounter. Ambassador Chun, he said, his voice lacking its previous authority, the Vrex Empire wishes to formally apologize for our mischaracterization of human capabilities. We also wish to request immediate renegotiation of our technological licensing agreements with human corporations. Similar statements began coming from delegations around the chamber. The Kethran Commonwealth requested immediate discussions about formalizing their dependence on human logistics systems. The Rigelian Federation asked for emergency consultations about their military supply arrangements. Even the proudly isolationist Tau Empire admitted they needed to discuss their extensive use of human technologies. But it was the crystalline beings of Silthara who provided the most startling response. Dr. Silthara's harmonic communications carried tones of something approaching awe as the translators rendered her words. Humanity has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. You have created a civilization that spans thousands of worlds and hundreds of species while maintaining peace, prosperity, and cooperation on a scale never before imagined. We wish to formally request inclusion in whatever new governmental structure humanity deems appropriate for galactic administration. The implications of that request sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Silthara were essentially asking to become a protectorate of humanity rather than maintain their independence. Ambassador Chen raised her hand for silence. Honored delegates, she said, I think there may be some misunderstanding about humanity's intentions. The chamber fell quiet as everyone waited to hear what new revelations might be coming. Humanity has no desire to become the rulers of galactic civilization, Chen continued. We have spent 2 centuries building a cooperative, prosperous galactic society. We have no intention of abandoning that achievement in favor of an empire. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward to elaborate. What we want is formal recognition of the reality that already exists. Humanity is already the primary technological and administrative power in galactic civilization. We simply want that role to be acknowledged and properly compensated rather than hidden behind layers of corporate licensing agreements and unofficial arrangements. Colonel Webb activated a new display showing proposed governmental structures. We envision a reformed galactic council with humanity holding permanent senior status, but not dictatorial authority. Member civilizations would maintain their sovereignty and independence while acknowledging their integration into human-managed systems. The display showed a complex but reasonable structure that preserved the autonomy of member species while formally recognizing humanity's role in maintaining galactic civilization. Think of it as similar to the relationship between a city government and the utility companies that provide power, water, and telecommunications, Webb explained. The city maintains its independence and makes its own decisions, but it acknowledges its dependence on infrastructure services and pays appropriate compensation for them. Ambassador Chen gestured to the assembled delegates. We want galactic civilization to continue functioning as it has been peacefully, prosperously, and cooperatively. We simply want formal recognition that this success is built on human contributions, and we want fair compensation for the services we provide. Chancellor Vorth consulted her notes again. Ambassador Chen, the Council is prepared to discuss specific terms for formalized arrangements. However, we have some concerns about the transition period and the scope of changes required. What kind of concerns? Chen asked. Economic disruption, for one, replied a trade representative from the Centauri Commonwealth. If human corporations begin charging full market rates for technologies and services they've previously provided at minimal cost, many of our economies could face severe adjustment problems. Dr. Rodriguez smiled reassuringly. We have no intention of creating economic chaos. Transition to market rates would be gradual and carefully managed to avoid disrupting established economic relationships. Military concerns are also significant, added the Ridiculed Federation's defense minister. If human support for Council military operations were withdrawn suddenly, our defensive capabilities would be severely compromised. Colonel Webb nodded, which is why we're proposing formal defense cooperation agreements rather than unilateral changes to current arrangements. Council military forces would continue operating as they do now, but with explicit acknowledgement of their dependence on human support systems. But it was Ambassador Zektar who asked the question that everyone was thinking. Ambassador Chen, he said slowly, what guarantees can humanity provide that this new arrangement won't evolve into domination? Once we formally acknowledge our dependence on human systems, what prevents humanity from leveraging the dependence to impose your will on galactic civilization? The question hung in the air like a challenge. It was the heart of every government's concerns about formally acknowledging humanity's role. Ambassador Chen was quiet for a long moment before responding. Ambassador Zektar, she finally said, we've had the capability to dominate galactic civilization for over a century. If that had been our goal, we would have achieved it long ago. She gestured to the displays showing human capabilities. We could have revealed our military superiority and conquered the galaxy through force. We could have created economic dependencies and used them to extort political concessions. We could have manipulated galactic politics from behind the scenes to create the governmental structures we preferred. Instead, Dr. Rodriguez continued, we chose cooperation. We chose to share our technologies freely. We chose to work within existing institutions rather than replacing them with human alternatives. Colonel Webb added, we chose to build a galactic civilization based on mutual benefit rather than domination, even though domination would have been easier to achieve. Chen looked around the chamber at thousands of alien faces. The guarantee you're asking for isn't something we can provide through words or treaties, she said. The guarantee is our history. We've had the power to dominate for generations, and we've chosen not to use it that way. She paused thoughtfully. But perhaps more importantly, domination would be counterproductive to our actual goals. We want a prosperous, peaceful, innovative galactic civilization. Oppressed societies don't innovate. Dominated populations don't prosper. Conquered civilizations don't contribute to the kind of galactic society we've been working to build. Dr. Rodriguez activated a final display showing the outcomes of human galactic strategy over the past 2 centuries. Look at what we've achieved together, he said. Galactic civilization has experienced unprecedented peace, prosperity, and technological advancement. Standards of living have improved for every species. Military conflicts have virtually disappeared. Trade and cultural exchange have flourished. This didn't happen by accident. It's the result of deliberate policies designed to create exactly these outcomes. Why would we abandon a strategy that has been so successful in favor of domination, which would inevitably destroy what we've built? Chancellor Vorth looked around the chamber, reading the mood of the assembled delegates. Ambassador Chun, she said, I believe the Council is prepared to approve humanity's proposal for formal recognition and restructure relationships. However, we would like to request a transition period to allow member governments to adjust their policies and prepare their populations for these revelations. How long a transition period? Chen asked. 6 standard months for initial adjustments, followed by a 2-year period for full implementation of new arrangements. Chen consulted briefly with her colleagues before responding. Acceptable. We would also like to propose the establishment of a new institution, the Galactic Infrastructure Council, to manage the formal transition and ongoing administration of human-provided services. The GIC would include representatives from all major civilizations and would serve as the interface between member governments and human administrative systems. This would provide the oversight and accountability mechanisms that member governments need while formalizing the cooperative arrangements that have made galactic civilization so successful. The chamber erupted in discussions as delegates began to realize that they were witnessing the birth of a new form of galactic governance, one that acknowledged reality rather than maintaining comfortable illusions. When the final vote was called, it was unanimous. Every civilization in the galaxy voted to formally acknowledge humanity's role as the architects and administrators of galactic civilization. Ambassador Chen stood in the center of the chamber as thousands of alien beings applauded, a gesture that had no meaning in most of their cultures but had somehow become universal when dealing with humans. Thank you, she said simply. We look forward to continuing our work together to build an even more prosperous and peaceful galactic society. As the session ended and delegates began to disperse, Dr. Rodriguez approached Ambassador Chun with a pleased expression. Think this will work? He asked. Chen smiled, genuinely this time. It's going to work beautifully. We've just formalized the most successful civilization in galactic history while maintaining the cooperative principles that made it successful in the first place. Colonel Webb joined them, looking equally satisfied. Plus, he added, we no longer have to pretend to be incompetent. Do you have any idea how exhausting it's been to act like we don't know what we're doing for the past 2 centuries? Ambassador, Chen laughed. Well, we won't have that problem anymore. From now on, we can be as competent as we actually are. As the 3 humans walked toward the exit, they passed groups of alien delegates who were frantically discussing the implications of what they had just agreed to. Do you think they understand what just happened? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Some of them do, Chen replied. The smart ones realize that we've just offered them partnership in the most successful civilization in galactic history. The less smart ones are still worried about human domination. They'll figure it out, Colonel Webb said confidently. Once they see how much better everything works when we don't have to hide what we're doing, they'll wonder why we waited so long to formalize these arrangements. Ambassador Chen looked back at the chamber one last time. 200 years of careful planning, patient work, and strategic cooperation, she said. And now we finally get to see what humanity can accomplish when we don't have to pretend to be less than we are. The age of hidden human influence was over. The age of acknowledged human leadership in galactic civilization had begun. And judging by the enthusiasm with which alien governments were already requesting expanded cooperation agreements, It was going to be even more successful than the era of secret influence had been. Humanity had built the greatest civilization in galactic history. Now, finally, everyone knew it.